Hello. So today I wanted to talk about flare-ups. It's not always something that we really want to talk about when we're working to heal autoimmune disease. And a lot of times when we are on a healing journey, a flare-up of symptoms can feel like a really disappointing setback, especially if we've been doing really well and have really improved symptoms and quality of life. And having a flare-up of symptoms can make us feel like we're back at square one. And I know personally myself, when I was first starting out um, on this healing journey, trying to help myself, improve my symptoms and feel better with adult onset Still's disease when I was about 18, I had this vision that I would just figure out the right food to eat. I would cut out certain foods. I would reduce stress. I would do all these things that I was supposed to do, and then I would be cured. I would be healed. I would feel better. And I saw it as this really linear path. And so anytime I would ever feel any sort of setback or flare up of symptoms, I would get really disappointed or really down on myself, thinking that there was no room for that when I was trying to feel better. And I know a lot of times when I work with people as well, they will tell me that they feel like they've failed or they've done something wrong or they didn't try hard enough. And I think a lot of us can relate to that and feel that way. Even myself, a few months ago, I got a small flu from working at the hospital, and was sick with the flu for a couple days and then was better. And then it spurred off an immune reaction of my Still's disease. And I felt horrible, like what, I'm doing everything right. I know what to do. And yet this still happened and I still had this flare up of symptoms. And in that time, it's really easy to fall into overwhelm, to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm back at square one. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go, to feel really low, really sad, to blame yourself. And what I have developed over the years is what I like to call flare-up toolkit, which helps you to kind of know exactly what to do if these flare-ups happen. Not only know what to do, but in a sense to expect that they probably will happen in differing degrees. And what I do want to say is that once you kind of step off that platform of deciding to go on this healing journey and to find different ways to help yourself improve symptoms and feel better, you will never be back at square one. You will never be back exactly to where you started, although it may feel like that, but you will never be back at square one. And all of these, small setbacks as well. But sometimes it's hard to feel that way and to feel positive about them when you're in them. It can feel really, really bad. So what I wanted to share with you today is my flare-up toolkit. So 3 components to my flare-up toolkit that you can use anytime you have a flare-up of symptoms or a setback, so you don't fall into that overwhelm and you know what to do. Because now, coaching hundreds of women through healing journeys and sort of riding the wave of my own, I've learned that every single one has an upward trajectory, but it sort of goes up and down like this. So we know that if we can kind of sit back and know that there's going to be little ups and downs along the way, but we're always going up, then we can learn to kind of expect this and ride the wave with a little bit more grace. So the first component of the flare-up toolkit is to just breathe in and breathe out. A lot of times flare-ups can hit us when we are going a million miles an hour. Maybe we are feeling really good, and so we're kind of pushing the limits a little bit, because when you feel good and you're like, yeah, I can sort of widen what I eat, I can stay out later, I can do this, and it's normal, right? I do it too. But the first step when you start to feel some of these symptoms, because I know a lot of us are really good at monitoring on a daily basis to kind of understand where our body's at that moment in time. So the first thing to do is to take a step back and breathe in and breathe out. Because what can happen is if we start to feel some of these symptoms, like maybe some of this fatigue, or in my case, fevers, or maybe you're getting, that joint pain is creeping up a little bit, or some of the digestive issues, we can sometimes assume the worst and assume that we're going to revert back to the place that we used to be, where our body has taken us before. And like I said, once you step off that platform, it's always an upward trajectory. You're never completely back at square one. But our mind can kind of trick us into thinking the very worst. So before you go there, breathe in and breathe out. Really, and I actually literally mean that. So I literally mean taking 10 minutes to breathe and to do belly breathing, or to just sit in silence and kind of really assess where you are at before allowing yourself to spiral into this place of panic and overwhelm. A lot of times, if we are really in tune with our body, we can kind of just check in, and maybe we see, okay, yeah, I am feeling a little bit of this fatigue, or I am feeling some more brain fog. What does that mean? What have I been doing? What can I do now? And sort of reassess that instead of just jumping straight to panic. So an action step for this is to just set a timer for 10 minutes and simply breathe in and breathe out, deep breaths into your belly. So this can activate the parasympathetic nervous system through our diaphragm, and can bring us away from this fight or flight mode into this rest and digest mode. So from this space of more calm awareness, you can really ask yourself how you're feeling and what you need. And I find that to be really helpful, and it is the first step. And so the second step is to focus on what you can control. So a lot of times with autoimmune disease or chronic illness, it can feel really out of control. Like we don't have control over how we're feeling, or we may feel like we were doing everything right. Like we were eating well and we were sleeping, we were doing everything right. We were seeing the functional medicine doctor, we were taking all the supplements, and yet this still happened. So focusing instead on what you can control. And the two biggest things you can control are what you put in your body, so food, and rest and sleep. Those are two things you can focus on and control. So with the food, you just want to focus on eating nourishing foods to help your body. The immune system is a big nutrient hog, and it takes up a lot of our nutrients. So if we're experiencing a flare-up, we want to give it more good nutrients so it has the building blocks it needs to be able to help us. And sometimes, we may have strayed away from what we've been eating, or maybe just indulging more and eating different things, and that's perfect and fine. Healing diets, even like autoimmune paleo or things like that, are meant to be done for a period of time, and you're meant to reintroduce foods that work for you. And so sometimes when we have a flare-up, what I like to do is just sort of batten down the hatches, if you will, and kind of go back to basics. Go back to what you know works for you. So that's going to be different for everyone, what you know works for you, but just kind of a more simplified diet that's full of really nutrient-dense foods. So that's things like bone broth and good soups that are kind of easy to digest, fermented foods if that works for you, all of these good healing, nourishing foods, lots of good cooked veggies, and just knowing that you're putting those good things in your body and it's helping your immune system to regulate itself and do what it needs to do. And so the second piece to this is getting enough rest. And rest is really important. It allows our body to kind of regenerate and do what it needs to do. And so I know sometimes if you're going through a flare-up, sleep might be hard, or you might be taking medications like prednisone or something that just make your sleep all wacky. So if sleep is challenging for you, just resting, just, kind of saying no to some engagements or activities, really honoring your body and giving it time to rest and repair, because it needs that. And like I said before, a lot of times a flare-up of symptoms might hit us when we're going about 1,000,000 miles an hour. So we kind of go from 60 to 0, I guess. And in that time, it's really important to give your body some rest. And I know for a lot of us that can be hard, especially now when we have jobs and kids and responsibilities. It can feel like we don't have time for a flare-up. We don't have time to feel bad. And I certainly felt that way. And it can be really hard to say, okay, I need to take this time out and I need to give myself some rest so my body can heal and regenerate. Because I really do believe that rest and sleep are one of the most powerful things we can do to help our body. So definitely food and what we're putting in our body, but that's not everything. Rest and sleep are really important. So I know it's hard. I know that piece is hard, and it's hard for me too. But I have come to learn through my own journey and through coaching hundreds and hundreds of women that it is one of the most important pieces, especially if we're dealing with a flare-up. And the third piece in the flare-up toolkit is to call on your care team. So a lot of times it can feel really isolating to be in this place, especially if maybe family or people around us don't have the same experience or don't really understand exactly what we are going through. It can feel really lonely to know what to do next. So what I want to say is that you don't have to do this alone, and calling on a care team to help you can be really supportive emotionally and physically for your body and what symptoms you're having. So for me personally, when I was going through my flare-up just only a few months ago, the first thing I did was, besides breathe in and breathe out, because I went into panic mode as well, was to call my care team. And for me at that time, it was checking in with my rheumatologist to get some blood work and, possibly adjust medications or things like that. For me also, it's my acupuncturist. Acupuncture has been really helpful for me in sort of regulating my nervous system in times of flare-up. So for me, it was checking in with her and having, more frequent appointments, and also my meditation app. I think a lot of times we assume that a care team has to be really fancy, expensive doctors or practitioners, and it doesn't necessarily. Meditation is a really big part of my flare-up toolkit, and it's free, and I use a meditation app called Insight Timer. If you are looking for one, it's good. You can also just set a timer on your phone for that, but these guided meditations really, really helped me through this difficult time when I was feeling really low energy, a lot of anxiety and stress. That's a big part of my care team. So other people on your care team could be also like your partner who you live with or your family, to speak with them and sort of organize a plan where maybe you're doing a little bit less. Maybe you're taking a little bit more off your plate, and you're, mindfully communicating that with someone else so they can take on a little bit more while you're not feeling well. That's a really important piece too, and they're on your care team as well. You could also have health coaches, dietitians, different practitioners, therapists, energy healers. It could be yoga, it could be a functional medicine practitioner. It's going to be different depending on where you're at and the team that you've gathered over the years. But what I want to say is that why I've included it in the 3 steps is that it's one of the most important things that you do, is to get support and get help, so you don't have to do this on your own, and you can kind of speed up the process as well. It's definitely a really important piece. So those are the three components of my flare-up toolkit, and what I sort of guide people that I'm coaching as well to use, so you don't fall into overwhelm. So when symptoms crop up or when you feel these things, you say, okay, I know what to do. I'm going to breathe in, breathe out. I'm going to focus on the levers that I can control. That's going to be food and rest are the biggest ones. And if you have more questions about food specifically for you, because it is going to be a little bit individual, and I haven't gone super deep into the exact food today, you can send me a direct message, or I always offer free 30-minute discovery calls. So you can book in a call with me, and we can create a plan of action for you specifically based on where you're at and what your health goals are. And especially if you're in the midst of a flare-up now and you need some support, I can definitely help support you in that way too. So I'll put a link to that at the bottom of this here, so you can book in a free discovery call with me. And I like to offer that as another means of support. So you have someone as part of your care team. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, I don't really have anyone on my care team, think of the really easy things I spoke about, like a meditation app, speaking to your partner, but then definitely you need some support, I am here, because I know, especially during flare-ups, it can be really lonely and it can be really overwhelming. So I just want you to know that it's okay to feel all of those negative emotions, to feel really sad about it, especially if you felt like you've been doing really well. But to know that it's not your fault that you're feeling this way, that this happens. Flare-ups happen. Of course they happen. And what we can do, as opposed to falling into overwhelm and blaming ourselves and feeling really low and thinking that nothing's ever going to work for us, or that we're broken and there's nothing we can do, that's not true. Definitely not true. And to just sort of follow these steps to get out of that overwhelm and bring yourself up a little bit, so you can see that this is a normal part of the healing journey, and anyone on it knows that this does happen. So you're definitely not alone, and you're doing great. Exactly what you're doing right now, you're doing great, because I know it can take a lot of work, but everything you're doing is great. And just following these steps when you feel kind of low or feel in that overwhelmed place will help bring you out. So if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to type them in the chat here or to send me a direct message. And again, you can always book in a free 30-minute call with me as well. I would love to hear more about you and your story and be able to help support you. Thank you.